All right, get ready because today we are diving deep into the story of Hachiko, the loyal dog. We've got a ton of stuff on him, articles, encyclopedia entries, even travel blogs about his statues.
It really is amazing how this dog's story has touched so many people. It goes way beyond just being about a dog.
It really does. And that's what we're going to get into today, why this Akita, born back in 1923, still makes people feel things so strongly.
It's a story that connects with something deep inside us, don't you think?
Definitely. But okay, for anyone who needs a refresher, Hachiko 101, he's born in 1923, adopted by this professor, Hidesaburo Ueno. But here's the thing, Ueno treated him more like a son.
That's so important, because the parent-child bond in Japan, it's UGE. It makes what Hachiko did way more than just, oh, I miss my owner.
For sure. So every day, Professor Ueno's got his commute to Tokyo Imperial University. And every day, Hachiko walks him to Shibuya Station, waits for him to come back. Sounds pretty normal so far, right?
Right. Until you remember the tragedy at the heart of it all.
Exactly. In 1925, Professor Ueno dies while he's at work. He never comes back to that train station.
And Hachiko. He keeps waiting at Shibuya Station for 9 years, 9 months, and 15 days.
It's unbelievable when you think about it. They were only together for a little over a year, 1 year and 4 months, but he waits almost 10 times that.
It's that powerful image, the unwavering loyalty, the devotion that gets to people, makes them think about their own experiences with loss and love.
Absolutely. He becomes this symbol of never giving up on the ones you love, like true loyalty might actually exist in the world.
And you know what's interesting? His story got famous while he was still alive.
Wait, seriously? I never knew that.
Yeah. Back in the 1920s, newspapers were writing about him. One of Professor Ueno's students, Hirokichi Saito, he was doing research on Akita breeds. He noticed Hachiko, how dedicated he was, and wrote articles. Suddenly, everyone knew this dog's name.
So it wasn't just the sadness of him passing. People were already captivated by this dog.
It really makes you think. It was his routine, that commitment day after day, that made people think about their own relationships, their own loyalty.
And get this, the first statue of Hachiko. They built it in 1934 while he was still alive. Everyone loved him.
It's so different from the vibe of the current Shibuya statue, the one everyone pictures. That one was built after he died.
That's true. The one in Shibuya is definitely more serious, more about remembering.
They're both about Hachiko. But they show how people saw his story differently over time. It's not just one thing. It keeps changing as the years go by.
And speaking of different ways to see him, can we talk about all the statues? There's like a whole Hachiko statue tour you could do.
Right. Like the original, that was actually bronze. Sadly, it got melted down during World War II. Needed the metal for the war effort.
No way. I had no idea. So the one in Shibuya now, that's like Hachiko 2.0.
Exactly. The sculptor's son made it after the war. But then there's the statue at the University of Tokyo where Professor Ueno worked. That one's totally different. It's Hachiko and the professor together again. Happy ending vibes.
It's true. It's like a fairy tale version compared to the Shibuya one. Each one shows a different feeling,
It's like they're trying to capture different parts of his story, all those emotions wrapped up in it. And it gets even better. Ready for this? There's one in Rhode Island.
Rhode Island?
Yeah.
Seriously?
After they made that American movie, Hachi, A Dog's Tale,
Yeah.
they filmed part of it there, and they built a replica of the Shibuya statue.
People are really dedicated to this dog. Makes sense, though. His story is everywhere.
It's proof that this isn't just a Japanese story anymore. It's something everyone connects with.
Speaking of the movies, though, we all know Hollywood loves to jazz things up a little for the big screen. So while we're drying our tears after those movies, let's talk about what really happened after Professor Ueno died.
It is important to remember that movies aren't always accurate.
Exactly. And one thing they always get wrong is Professor Ueno's partner, Yaiko. She took care of Hachiko, and they were really close, according to what we found.
And here's something most people don't know. In 2016, they moved Yaiko's remains to be buried with Professor Ueno and Hachiko. It's like they're finally acknowledging her role,
Wow, that's incredible. Like history's finally giving Yaiko her due. But it makes you wonder, are we only getting part of the story even now? It makes you think about all the other stuff we miss, the details that get lost over time, like how important Yaiko was to Hachiko.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that there's always more to the story. You can't really understand Hachiko without thinking about both of them, Professor Ueno and Yaiko.
Totally. It adds a whole other layer of complexity, don't you think?
Definitely. Makes it even more emotional, more relatable, even though, he's a dog.
And that actually makes me wonder, we call him this icon of loyalty, this dog who waited forever. But Did Hachiko even understand that Professor Ueno was gone? Was it like instinct, grief, or just that he was used to the routine?
That's the big question, right? And the truth is, we can't really know for sure. We're not dogs.
Yeah, but we can still have our theories. What do you think?
Some people like to believe that Hachiko understood death,
Yeah.
that he was making a choice to be loyal. But others might say it was more like a habit, a really strong bond tied to a routine.
It's like everyone sees what they want to see in it.
Exactly. It's like a mirror to our own ideas about love and loyalty. And I think that's why people still love his story. It lets them think about their own lives.
It makes you think about your own relationships, doesn't it? Are we as devoted as Hachiko?
That's a good question. Are we there for the people we care about, day in and day out?
Makes you think. One more thing I found interesting. One of the Hachiko statues, the one at the University of Tokyo, it's near this museum, right? And they actually have some of his remains there.
It's a little morbid, sure,
Mm.
but that's Japan for you. Death and remembrance are really different there. It's about keeping the memory close.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. It's like they're still connected, even now. But speaking of connections, Hachiko's story, it really changed things for the Akita breed, didn't it?
Big time. After all those newspaper articles and the first statue, Akitas became super popular. People wanted their own Hachiko.
I mean, who wouldn't want a dog that loyal? But they're not exactly easy dogs, right?
Right, they're not for everyone. Akitas are smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, and loyal. But they're also independent. They've got a mind of their own. You need to know what you're doing to own one.
It's like you've got to earn their respect, just like Professor Ueno did with Hachiko.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And even though it's tempting to think, I want a loyal dog like that, every dog is different. Just because it's an Akita doesn't mean it'll be just like Hachiko.
It's a good reminder that getting a dog, any dog, is a huge decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not something to jump into without, doing your homework first.
Definitely not. And just like picking the right dog is important, understanding Hachiko's story, it's more than just he was a good boy.
Right. It's about all the other stuff we talked about, the history, the culture, even how we think about animals.
That's what makes it so interesting, I think.
Mm.
People are still talking about him, debating about him, all these years later.
It shows how powerful stories can be. One dog in Japan, and it connects with people everywhere.
It really does. And it gets you wondering, if Hachiko could talk, what would he say about all of it? About waiting for all those years?
That's a question for the ages, right? We can guess all day, but we'll never really know what was going on in his head.
And maybe that's okay. It's part of what makes him so special. Everyone can see something different in his story.
It makes you think about love and loyalty and, I don't know, maybe even what it means to be human, even though he was a dog.
Exactly. He makes us ask, are we as devoted as he was? Do we show up for the people we love even when it's hard?
Those are some deep thoughts for a story about a dog. Well, on that note, we're going to have to wrap up our deep dive into the world of Hachiko.
It's been a pleasure talking about him today, really.
Hopefully everyone listening learned something new today, and maybe they'll even look at their own furry friends a little differently. Until next time, keep exploring those fascinating corners of history.